it is something worth investing in. So we have here now, I'm going to split this up. Welcome, if this is your first time watching, welcome. I am Twisted Teach. I'm going to be doing a series on Rogue Adventure, a mobile game for Android and iOS that is a rogue-like deck builder, where you basically do different runs. Every run is different, and you will go from point A to point B, getting certain unlocks, building a deck, and trying to fight different monsters. I have already done the Warrior, and I'm now going to be going over cards and skills. Here, you unlock this button at level 2, which allows you to take a look at all of the cards in the game, as well as all of the skills in the game. Whether you've unlocked them or not, you will be able to read them. So, for example, Burn Dagger unlocked at level 4. And we go further down, and there is a lot to this game. So many skills, so many cards, and it's just something so impressive. I can just scroll down slowly this time instead of just burning through it. I'm pretty sure I'm hurting your guys' eyes just watching this, and you guys are going to be turned away just from how boring I am. As you go through and you're just able to take a look at everything, mass amounts of cards. I'm not even halfway through yet, and I can just scroll down and continue scrolling down. Some of these cards that you unlock, the further you go on, they just become so good, so easy to play. And you'll get some of these cards later down the road that just, they almost break the game. Some of them are just really good. So as we go through and unlock new things, every level I'll probably come back and double check and explain everything here. But I'm going to go ahead and start from the top of the cards and skills. So first of all, we have neutral cards, right? So I can turn those off, the neutral cards, blah, 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 blah. But here we have the Warriors starting cards. The Fighter, the Guard, the Mage. We then go ahead, and actually let me exit out of this and redo it, because then it has all the unlocked cards. Next, you have the Apprentice Guard and Apprentice Knight. These are pretty good. The Apprentice Guard and the Apprentice Knight, for each card played previously during the turn, so if you have a bunch of mana in a turn, they scale exponentially for every card. So 3 shield for every card played before, 4 damage for every card played before. You can end up doing massive amounts of damage and shielding if you manage to play your cards right. Get resistance and strength buffs and play a lot of cards in the same turn. Next, you have the Apprentice Switch. Put a card from your draw pile into your hand and do 4 damage at random. Sometimes the random damage is not too bad. Tend to stay away from the RNG. Sometimes they can be good, sometimes they can't be good, but really what you're looking for here is put the card from the draw pile in your hand. If you're looking for something desperately turn 1, and you really need to play it, or you need something that grants you immunity, and you have the ability to get that one card out of your deck because it's the last card, it's really worth it. Next, you have the Crimson Guard. 4 shield, if the target is burned, deal 8 damage. It's pretty good if you manage to run a Beastman deck properly and manage to get it going. So, here we have Elf Warrior, the level up card. Deal 3 damage, kill 3 enemies, upgrade. Deal 9 damage, kill 6 enemies, upgrade. Then she deals 27 damage on draw. Huge damage. And any strength buffs on top of it just makes it that much better. Like, she's such a good single target burst damage card. And she just makes it so easy if you get her early on. The High Witch, as you saw in this the Warrior run, if you did watch it, I would recommend it. If you guys have not seen the Warrior run, I'd go to YouTube, look up Twisted Teach, no spaces, and you will find a series for walkthroughs on this. Of course, I'm currently recording both the Warrior episode and the card and the skill description, so you'll have to wait if you were watching and currently the one other viewer I have. Feel free to join chat if you so wish. If not, I will continue to just go through the game. I'm sure it's boring. High Witch, weak to all enemies. Gain 100 shield. She upgrades to do 9 weak to all enemies and exiling. Now there is something future down the road that once you level up, there will be cards that draw cards from your exile. You'll be able to pull cards back, and this is where this card really becomes really good. Sapphire Guard, one of my favorite cards in the game. Gain 5 shield, gain 1 mana. The overcharged, yeah, it kind of sucks that you're going to overcharge yourself, but if you don't have any other ways of generating mana and you don't really care about that, but you want the extra 5 shield and the mana for free, basically this card plays itself for free. Which means in a defensive deck or even an offensive deck, that extra 5 shield might save your life. Young Fighter, another really good card. If you've got a handful of combat cards, yeah, it doesn't subsequently get stronger because you can only ever have 4 cards in your hand. But that's a 12 damage card for pretty much nothing. Desert Fighter, 8 damage if the target is shielded, it deals 16 instead. It's pretty solid. As you saw, there are some creatures that shield themselves, but not a lot. Elf Ranger, deal 8 damage to a target and 4 damage to all. It's grown on me over the year that I've played this game to be able to have cards like this. Being able to fight multiple targets at the same time. Being able to whittle down a target with more damage, followed by dealing 4 damage to all others still is just... It's overlooked by some of the other cards you'll see later on in more further runs as we go. Young Witch, if the target has weak, you gain 3 mana. It's so easy to get this. If you have High Witch and you run Young Witch, it's just 3 mana. Of course it gives you Overcharge and Exile, sure, but if they don't have weak, it puts 2 weak on everything anyways. So it's great for the mana, and it's great for it's just a solid card to have 1 or 2 of in a deck. Fire Priestess, apply 3 burn to all enemies. Lackluster. There are better cards that do Fire Priestess's job better, and saving up the gold or passing on and getting a gemstone to get the gold upgrade is always preferable. Like Dark Lord takes Fire Priestess and Poison Cat and makes them obsolete, because he applies not only 3 damage, but 3 burn and 3 poison to all enemies. And he doesn't exile himself. Okay, so he's really strong. And then you look at Desert Priestess, as I scroll past it several times. Remove the shield of target enemy, deal 5 damage. This could be useful. If you know the runs in the maps by heart, and you know exactly when you're going to fight a certain boss type, and you've set your deck up 100% correctly, and you're going through and only fighting the people that you are expecting to fight, Desert Priestess could be one of the strongest cards in the game. Removing 30 plus shield from somebody and then dealing them 5 damage makes certain boss fights just such a cakewalk. It makes elite fights such a cakewalk. But if you're not super keen on memorizing everything, it's not really worth it. You're not really gonna... You can just burn the shield down with regular damage. Yeah, she deals 5 damage, but really the shield getting rid of is not something you want to pass up for something else. Or you want to pass that up for something else. You don't want to pass something else up for that. Black Knight. He does work. Black Knight having a copy in a single deck with lots of shielding makes it so that it's possible to burn down bosses really quickly. You get 50 shield and you do 50 damage, and it's just smacking them. It hurts. Knight of the Sigil, so a card we didn't get to see, deals 15 damage, it gains 1 mana. However, it does require, like Guardian of the Sigil, that you have no cards in your discard or your deck. Kind of a turn 1 strategy. Sometimes it can cuck you when it's your only damage card in your hand, or it's the only card you can play because your deck is magic, and this was your damage card, but you got magic blocked, and so now you can't even play this card. And so you just have to burn your turn. It can be useful. I've had it work. I've had it do wonders. It's not a card I take every run. Lady of the Dark Souls, deal 3 damage to all enemies for each card played this turn. It's the scaling damage. It's the demon version of Apprentice Guard, or the Apprentice Knight, and she's okay. It's nice to have lots of card play if you're going to use her. Guardian of the Sigil, like Knight of the Sigil, has her uses. Turn 1 drop with the permanent strength and the mana, it's great. It's good. But it's situational. I didn't play it too much that game, as you saw. And it makes it a little harder to be able to run her regularly. Angel Archer, as I stated in the Warrior run, angels are strong. Angels are great. If you get an angel deck running in your any class, the amount of healing and the amount of damage for each angel you have in your deck or in the game, it scales so really good. Beastmen and angels scale really good if you manage to get just Beastmen and just angels, or a mixture of them. No matter what, there are some cards you'll see as you level on that just make some combinations really good. Lion Fighter, deal 5 damage, gain 4 shield. Wonderful staple card for a deck. Drop some cards for it. Drop a guard, drop a fighter in a warrior deck. Pass up something else on the board. For shield and damage, it's really good. Lizard Fighter and Lizard Guard are the Apprentice Guard and Apprentice Fighter Knight for regular cards, but Beastmen. Deal 3 damage for each Beastman card in the game. You get 1 shield for each Beastman card in the game, and then you get a strength and a resistance after they're played. So yeah, they don't immediately proc it with their own bonus, but they do guarantee any other cards played that turn the bonus. And they scale so well. Just having 3 cards, just Lion Fighter, Lizard Fighter, and Lizard Guard. Immediately you play Lizard Fighter and do 9 damage, gain a strength. You play Lizard Guard, gain 3 shield, gain a resistance. But because resistance stacks, you get 2 shield for that 1 resistance for every Beastman in the game. So now you're gaining not 3 shield, but 6 shield. And it just exponentially climbs from there. And it just, such a good card. I would go Lizard Guard over Lizard Fighter every time. If you see them together, always go Lizard Guard. Never go Lizard Fighter. Especially if you're playing Beastman. Next, you've got Poison Cat and Fire Cat. Passed up 100% by Dark Lord. Sometimes it's worth playing if you're running a Beastman heavy deck. The ability to have the extra Beastman and still get a poison and burn off makes it so that certain bosses just melt under constant damage, with Lizard Guard being able to defend you. Be all your defense in Lizard Guard with Cats dropping the debuffs. Pretty solid stat, thing, but Dark Lord over these any day. Especially non-Beastman decks. These are useless in non-Beastman decks. Young Fox, Beastman, or, okay, maybe not useless. They're pretty good if you've got a good enough strategy to support them. Young Fox, Beastman, deal 1 damage to all enemies for each Beastman card in the game. It's Lizard Fighter without the strength, but scales with strength, so it could become a Lizard Fighter. It's okay. Centaur Fighter, deal 2 damage. It's basically the Elf Ranger, but Beastman. Boom. Beastman synergy. That's all you have to know. Night Fairy, you saw it putting in lots of work in the fighter walkthrough for normal. Being able to go get a card from your discard pile to your hand allows you to do such good things. And the great thing that they've added to it is shuffle all cards in your discard pile into your draw pile. So Knight of the Sigil and Guardian of the Sigil now have synergy with fairies, which makes it so good if you can manage to manipulate your decks how you want them. Ivy Fairy is the fairy version of Poison Cat. It's okay. Volcanic Fairy, same thing. Fairy version of Fire Cat. It's okay. They, unlike the Beastman, though, Fairy doesn't have a lot of really hyper good synergy with Fairy. Yeah, it's okay, but really the only reason you'd be dropping these fairies is to level up your quests that much faster. Bangbot. Good. It's a solid 6 damage. It's the fighter, or the warrior's fighter card, duplicates itself, exiles, and in an exile deck, Bangbot is great. It's so good. Solid staple card for a deck if you need damage. Gorillatron, robot. If the enemy intends to attack, gain 7 shield, otherwise deal 7 damage. It's nice being able to, on off turns, deal damage, sure, and on turns that you're about to be dealt damage, shielding yourself, but sometimes you want a card to do just one thing. So yes, in a deck, robot synergy, the ability to defend yourself is good, but sometimes being unable to control what Gorillatron gives you makes it so the card a little less desirable, but still good. Imperial Guard. Imperial Guard is that 4 damage, gain 8 shield. Great card. I would say anything that gives you damage and shield is just a solid A+ card. Well worth your time investing in picking up over something else possibly. I'll probably one of these days make a tier list for cards on what you should take over what. Maybe. I'll think about that. Elite Guard. She did lots of work in the Warrior run that I did. She deals 10 damage, she gives you 2 resistance. That's a lot of damage on a single card. And their resistance is nothing to scoff at either. Especially in a deck that synergizes really well with being able to block damage like the Warrior. The Dark Shielded Knight. Gain 4 shield for each combat card in your hand. It's the Apprentice Guard. It's the young fighter, but shielding. It's good. Can be great if you have a mainly combat deck, but not so good if you're running a lot of magic. High Priest. Put a card from your discard pile into your hand. Gain 1 mana. Doesn't shuffle your discard like the Night Fairy does, but it does exile itself, but it gives you 1 mana, and I like that's what Shark Labs has done. They have made it so that mana cards are just so picky with being able to give mana repetitively, and being able to draw a card from your discard pile is just really strong with mana. So understandable, the exile. Kind of sad, but understandable. I should have picked up the Forgotten Priestess. I was running into so many situations in the Warrior run that I could have used remove all non-permanent debuffs from yourself. That's just being able to stop yourself from being weakened to do damage, or shield yourself, or be silenced, because surprisingly, I think the way this interacted at one point was even if you were silenced and couldn't play magic cards, you could still play Forgotten Priestess and remove the silence from yourself and apply the 2-week. So I don't know if they've changed it and fixed it, but if they haven't, great card. Absolutely fantastic. A++++ card. Love Forgotten Priestess. Should have run her. Really sad I didn't. Snow Queen. Used to be a fairy. Maybe not. Not quite sure. It's been a while. She gives you immune, exiles herself. It's okay. Lady of the Night. Gain 1 mana for each combat card in your hand. Gain overcharged. Pretty good mana. Doesn't exile herself. Keeps combat heavy decks going. Makes it so that you guys can just pump out the numbers. Good. Thule Acolyte. Exile a random card in your hand, gain 20 shield, exile. In cards that in decks that bring back your exile, Thule Acolyte is phenomenal. Now, it is a risky card, high risk, high reward. You could exile something in your hand that you do not want to be exiled, which means you're not going to defend yourself that turn if you don't do it, or you'll lose the game if you don't. So, high risk, high reward, great card. Would run at least a copy of, because sometimes you get really lucky. Ant Warrior. Deal 7 damage, gain 4 shield. Higher damage, lower shield, shield damage, just great. And it's a Beastman. It's Lion Guard or Lion Fighter, but Ant Warrior. Beastman, it's great. Run it. Ant Wizard. Beastman. Gain 3 shield for each Beastman card in the game, gain overcharge until the end of his turn. It's not worth running over Lizard Guard. It isn't. The overcharged is just not worth running Ant Wizard. It's good, but why doesn't Lizard Guard have what Ant Wizard has? It Wizard doesn't give you mana. If it was giving you mana on top of the shield, maybe I'd understand the overcharged, but it's just... The overcharged is too much to run on a Wizard. Not worth it. Snake Emperor. Poison burn deck. Deals 9 damage. Targets poison. Deals 18. Too good. Absolutely. I have wrecked runs with several Snake Emperors in my deck. Really good card. Really good card. Fairy Queen. You saw at the end of the game that the end of the warrior run that I was doing, I really wish I had gotten this earlier. I really wish that I had run Fairy Queen earlier, because after playing 30 fairies, she transforms into gain 2 strength, 2 resistance, but exiles herself. But that permanent strength and resistance at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of a fight, great. She, of course, gives you temporary strength and resistance before flipping. Moon Fairy. Put a card from your draw pile into your hand, gain mana, exile. Great card. Being able to go search up a Fairy Queen turn 1 that's already transformed and drop her for free like you had her in your hand that turn. Great. Absolutely fantastic. One of the best cards in the game. Fairy Warrior. Fairy. Deal 2 damage for each fairy card in the game. Gain 1 shield for each fairy card in the game. Being able to stack with a strength resistance Fairy Queen and having like 3 or 4 fairies makes it so that Fairy Warriors are the single best carry cards you can run in a fairy deck. Great card to have multiples of. Always spend the 300 gold in order to upgrade or duplicate a card to get another Fairy Warrior. Always, 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 always. S tier card right here. Always. Gonna say that forever. Fairy Warrior, great card. Lady Bloom, Poison Cat version for fairies, another one. It's okay. Don't run over Dark Lord. Always run Dark Lord first. Fairy of Thorns, really good for really defensive decks that can just, now that the Thorns are permanent, Fairy of Thorns is great. Getting multiples of this and having like 15, 20 Thorns where they attack and take 20 damage a turn makes the fights so quick. Being able to get some of these before goblins in Enchanted Forest makes goblins a joke. It absolutely, 2 of them before goblins makes goblins an absolute joke. And I've been lucky to have one of those runs in the past. And maybe if I'm streaming and you guys see a triple Fairy of Thorns before Goblin Run, or double Fairy of Thorns before Goblin Run, you guys will see just how strong Fairy of Thorns really is. Dark Lord. 3 damage to all enemies, poison to all enemies, and burn to all enemies. 3 damage, poison, and burn to all enemies that doesn't exile itself. It is a stupid, strong card. It is a rare quality card for a reason. The gold border here, as you can see, some of them were silver bordered and some of them were gold bordered here after they flip. It's great boss card. It is so hard to pass up a Dark Lord. Do not sleep on this card. Vampire Lord, 7 damage, heal unblocked damage. Really good if you don't have any other life gain in the deck. Really good to be able to just drop this, get 7 HP if it's unblocked, and to continue the fight going. Or even if you manage to defend yourself, but you're on low HP, and you know fights are coming up that you can not take any damage and just heal, run Vampire Lord. Always. Sacred Knight, double your shield. Shield decks, pretty good. Warrior, Paladin, Barbarian, stuff like that. Sacred Knight's good. Shadow Assassin. Target enemy HP is half. Ignore shields. You lose 3 HP, sadly, and he does remove himself from the game, so that you can't just bring him back from exile and spam him. Good card. Always run at least one if you see him. Some of the big bosses have so much HP to burn through, and it's just so safe to run this guy. If bosses state they don't take damage or are immune, do not use Ninja. I've learned that the hard way. Hammer of Fate. Deal 12 damage if this attack kills the enemy. Gain 1 strength, 1 resistance, and 1 max mana until the end of the combat. This is Hyper Samurai. Right here. Hyper Samurai, but better. It's Hyper Warrior, but better. It's great. Wonderful card. Dark Wizard. Deal 10 damage to all enemies for each mana point consumed all your mana. If you have 2 Hammer of Fates procced in a boss fight because you managed to kill some minions, and you spend 5 mana to use Dark Wizard, you're doing 50 damage. It's huge. Or you drop something that gives you so much extra mana that turn, you just drop Dark Wizard and boom. Wizard of Nature, double your strength, double your resistance. Synergizes really well with permanent strength and resistance, and can be a really good card late game. Worth a duplicate if you have it. Guardian of the Demons. Deal damage equal to your shield to all enemies. Remove all your armor. I'm really sad they added this, remove all your armor at the end of this, because this is Dark Knight, but to all enemies. And I understand why they got rid of the armor, because being able to do this back to back to back just makes this too damn strong. But it's good. If you're running demons, not angels, in a defensive deck, it's worth it. General Wukong. Deal 2 damage to all enemies for each copy of this card in the game. Getting 2 of these as regular cards in the deck, and they duplicate themselves but don't exile, you can just be running General Wukong with Lizard Fighters and Warrior Guards, and you just burn through bosses and anything. Really good card. Sometimes not worth running. He can start flooding your deck if you play too many of them too fast. Hyper Samurai. 12 damage. If this attack kills the enemy, do not discard, replenish your mana. Works even past overcharged. I think it's an oversight. Use it while it's super strong. I'm going to try talking to Shark Labs, figure out if it's a thing that's supposed to be there, or if it's an intended thing. And ultimately, I say that I want to talk to Shark Labs because of it, because I really want the game to improve, and I always want to see improvement in the game as it goes forward in the future, because I love this game. This game is absolutely phenomenal. There's not enough resources out there, and I'm going to do my best to get basic information out to people, and then to show them how to get to Inferno 10. So, Hyper Samurai, good. Sentinel Robot. Add a Robohound into your discard pile for each card in your exile pile. Exile deck, this is where this comes in, because this is Robohound. Deal 2 damage, gain 2 shield, gain 1 mana, exile. No overcharged. Being able to run a robot deck with lots of exile, with the robot that exiles himself and duplicates, makes it so that when you play him 9 turns in, and you drop 16 Robohounds in your deck, you can just spam out Robohounds to your heart's content, and they go to the exile. So then you can play another Sentinel and get even more Robohounds. Great synergy, great cards. Ultron Robot. Deal damage equal to your missing HP to all enemies. Add an Ultron battery into your hand. Exiles. Really good if you're running into a lot of times where you're just losing a lot of HP, or you need that little bit of extra push in a boss fight. Paladin works really well with Ultron, and you'll see when you, if you watch the Paladin guide or you play Paladin, you'll see just how good Ultron is. Ultron battery. Gain 1 mana, heal 5, remove it from the game. It's good. Artillery unit. Deal 4 damage to all enemies for each card in your exile pile. With double Sentinel, double Robohound off the Sentinel, with robots, you could be just one-shotting everyone in the game. 4 damage to all enemies. With 32 Robohounds, you're doing 4d 120. You're doing 160 damage with just artillery unit. Hyper Warrior. Deals 12 damage. If this attack kills the enemy, gain 3 strength and 3 resistance, exile. If you're not able to proc him killing something, don't run Hyper Warrior. It's not worth exiling him unless you're playing an exile deck as well, to do 12 damage and to just lose him. You lose a card that you could have passed up for Wukong or fucking Dark Lord. It's not always worth running Hyper Warrior. Iron Colossus. He's a robot. You gain 3 shield for each robot card in the game. You gain 3 armor. However, he exiles. This is Space Commander, but better. Because you're gaining 3 shield per robot card and the 3 armored, when Space Commander says if your HP is below 50%, gain 10 shield, otherwise gain 2 armored, you're either gaining the shield or you're gaining the armored. And this dude isn't a boss drop. This is just a regular, like, silver bordered robot. It's The exile doesn't matter. If you're running an exile return or an exile deck, this card's too good. It's too good. BO1 robot. Gain 6 shield. Every time you draw this, gain a mana and a resistance. Really good to just have in your hand over and over and over again. As long as you don't play it, it doesn't exile itself, and in case you do need the 6 shield, you play it. Gives you the resistance, gives you the mana for free. Free card for the turn. It's just too good. Necromancer Acolyte. Apply 3 weak to all enemies. All enemies receive damage equal to their weak value. Can be really good in a heavy magic, really quick burst deck. And then of course you apply 1 curse to yourself, so you can't play the edge cards. But if you have 20-some weak, then it's doing 20-some damage, which can be good. And he doesn't exile himself. Blade of Justice. Stronger than Masked Swordsman in some aspects. Deal 4 damage to target enemy X times. X is the number of combat cards in your hand. So you're really going to only be doing a maximum of 16 damage. But they can't be blocked. While Masked Swordsman deals 2 damage to target enemy X times. X is the number of copies of this card in the game. Duplicate, exile. Good in an exile deck. Really good for managing to just have a slow-paced game. Drop 1 every turn, and you just manage to get him stacking. And he will do easily 30-40 damage in a game. Beast Champion. He's a Beastman. He deals 3 damage to target enemy 3 times. Strength affects this card 3 times. For every strength point you have, it gives him 3 damage points. So if you have 6 strength, you're doing 18 points of damage on top of his 3. He's doing 21 damage 3 times. That's great. Desert Cat. Same as Desert Fighter. Removes the shield, but this one applies 5 weak. If you're running a weak deck with like Necromancer Acolyte, it can be good. Lieutenant Armstrong. Demon. Deal 2 damage for each card in the discard pile. If you're not running Angels, and you're running a lot of cards in your deck, and you manage to get 16 cards in your discard, Lieutenant Armstrong is great. That's about the only time. It's a late game card. Red Bloom. Fairy. Add a Toxic Flower into your discard pile for each fairy card in the game. Toxic Flower, if your HP is below 50%, heal 3. Otherwise, apply 1 poison to all enemy, gain 1 mana. Really good in a fairy deck. Especially one that you're running the Beastman like poison build and you're doing 18 damage on a poison if you're above 50, or you're healing up to half HP, and with like 6 fairies you have 6 toxic flowers, and multiples of Red Bloom are good. Sigil Essence is gain immune, gain 2 resistance, consumes all your mana however, and requires, like the Knight of the Sigil and Guardian of the Sigil, to have your discard or draw pile be empty. Can be good. It's a mixed thing for me. It's okay. Young Mermaid. These are the last one before Bosk and other cards that get given to you by enemies. If the enemy has weak, gain 5 shield, otherwise deal 5 damage. Gain strength, gain resistance until the end of your turn. It's okay. It's good. Especially when you're applying consistent weak, the shield in a defensive deck is good, and the strength and resistance is nothing to be scoffed at. Starfish. This magic fish is evoked every time you go below 4 total cards. Deal 1 damage, gain 1 shield. This is a card given to you by a boss. It's not the worst boss card you can get. Genie Lamp. These genies, it summons either a Lady Genie or a Magic Genie chosen randomly, and it removes Genie Lamp permanently from the game. Gain 9 resistance on a Lady Genie gives you 9 resistance until the end of turn and gain 1 mana. Mr. Genie gives you 9 strength until end of turn, gain 1 mana, and they remove themselves. This boss helps you more than he hinders you. You'll see if we do some more runs, and you'll see that the chances of you losing on this boss are high, only because when he reaches a certain HP threshold, he becomes immune, he gives you a Genie Lamp, and then gives you a bunch of debuffs. But if you play these at the right time, with the right deck, this boss is a sheer joke. Corrupted Skeleton, deal 6 damage, lose 6 HP, remove. This is given to you in one of the final bosses, Land of the Dead, Skeleton King. And it's so hard to have something be put into your deck, and it just fills it up so quickly. Unlike Redfish, they only puts 1. But Redfish puts 3, and it deals 2 damage to the target and gives you 1 mana. But it exiles, and the target that gives this to you heals more than you do damage with. So unless you've got a lot of strength, it's useless. And it fills your deck so quickly. Next is Evil Berries. If this card is in your hand at the end of the turn, take 2 damage. The boss is an early boss, and as you go up in difficulty in Inferno ranks, Evil Berries become the bane of your existence because your deck's not big enough to ignore them. And if you don't have the right setup, you're going to take 2 damage, and you have to play them. And then if you haven't killed the minions for the tree, they start doing damage to you. Really dangerous. One of the strongest boss cards because of how early it is in the game. Energy Golem. Deal damage to all enemies equal to your... this is the wizard's... one of the wizard's cards for the class wizard. And deal damage to all enemies equal to the energy points. And you'll see when we get into wizard how this will work. Gain 1 mana. Gain overcharged until the end of the turn. Pretty good. Wizard. It's a leveled up card. It's not the wizard's specific card, but gain 1 mana, gain overcharged until the end of the turn, play 50 magic cards to upgrade, gain 2 mana, gain overcharged, play 70 magic cards to upgrade, gain 3 mana, gain overcharged, doesn't exile. Pretty good, really good, well worth picking up. Swordmaster, deal 9 damage to all enemies, solid card. Golem Warrior, one of the wizard's cards, deal 4 damage, deal an additional 4 damage for each sphere of energy activated. And you get spheres of energy for every amount of cards you play. Mud Golem, deal 2 damage, apply 2 weak, gain 3 shield. Really, really solid card. I wish it wasn't just in Wizard. Fairy Princess, Fairy. Add magic peas into your discard pile for each magic card in your hand. Really good with magic decks. Magic peas. If the enemy has poison, heal. If the enemy is poisoned, heal 2. Otherwise, apply 2 poison, gain 1 mana. Can be good in a fairy poison build. And that is going to be the last card for the level that I'm currently at, which is level 2. And then the next card you're going to unlock is Angel Priestess, but we'll go over that when we get there. So, skills. Because this is going to be a really long video, and I'm going to have to do this in multiple parts because I'm crazy, and I need to take a break after this. So, skills. Ghost Shield. At the start of each combat, gain 10 shield. Can be worth it. It's a low cost, and it can be good if you've got no other sources of shielding right at the start, but it's just the start of combat. It's too restrictive to be good. Knowledge of Strength. At the start of combat, gain 1 strength. Its cost sometimes outweighs its boon. It can be good if you're running a super strength build. Same with the Knowledge of Resistance. Spiked Armor. At the start of each combat, gain 3 thorns. This is permanent thorns. It's great if you're running a thorns build with a defensive deck. Would recommend taking. Toxic Wall. At the start of each combat, apply 4 poison to all enemies, as well as Burning Wall, apply 4 poison, or burn to all enemies. Really good if you're running the Dark Lord Fairy debuff strat. Really good. Frost Nova. At the start of each combat, daze all enemies. Solid S tier skill. Always take when you're starting getting later in the game. Chain Lightning. At the start of your turn, deal 3 damage to all enemies. It's good. Doing 3 damage every turn to just consistently rip out the damage can be useful. For only 6 gems, it's not bad. Bone Armor. If you end your turn without a shield, gain 15 shield. In case you're running into those situations where sometimes you don't get the cards you need, should have taken it with the Warrior run, but it gives you 15 armor to just survive that much longer. Bounty Hunter. If you get this early, take it. Every time you kill an enemy, gain 7 coin. Huge fucking buff to your income to be able to buy cards later on in the game and to replicate cards. Shuriken Attack. Every time you play 4 combat cards in a single turn, gain 1 strength. I don't know if it's permanent strength. If it's permanent strength, it's good. If it's not, it's useless. because you're not going to really be playing more than that. Kunai attack, every time you play 4 combat cards in a single turn, 1 resistance. It's the same. If it's not permanent, it's useless. Gold Ingot, costs 7, gives you 300 gold. That's your class ability right there. Always buy it. Always. Class abilities are normally good. I think there's 1 or 2 that you don't want to upgrade class abilities for, but other than that, all of them, buy it. Really good. Treasure Map now contains silver, gold, platinum, and diamond chests. If you're doing a chest run and you're expecting to hit every chest, or you get one of the other items that allows you to skip around the map where you choose, Treasure Map can be a godsend, because it can change you from getting bronze chests constantly to at least silver, if not gold. Platinum and diamond chests, I don't feel like it changes the odds very often or high enough to be able to get those chests regularly. Anti-Monster Mine. At each combat, the first enemy that attacks you receives 9 damage and applies 9 weak. It's good with the weak strat. It's good if you're expecting to take damage right after the start, but it's really just once. It's the first dude. It's not worth it. Telescope. Whenever you enter a merchant room, start the next combat with 2 extra mana. If you're expecting to hit every merchant room and every chest room only, and you get the ability to jump around the map where you choose, Telescope is great. Apple Pie. Enter a merchant room, heal 15. Merchant room, treasure room strat. Torch on reward screen. If you get this early, grab it. Reward screens give you 1 extra card to choose from, and it can be a boss card. Potion Maker. At the end of combat, heal 5. Pretty good. Thunder Blast. I did work with this in the Warrior run. If you run into boss fights where you can't attack because they're going to do something if you do, or you have the wounded and they're not going to do anything to you, it's 20 free damage, more than you're going to do in a regular turn. Wish I utilized it better in my run, but didn't. Dark Wall. At the start of each combat, apply 4 lethal enemies. It's the poison wall, debuff strat, pretty good. Demon Eye. Gain 1 max mana, you are permanently blind. If you have a deck that is so solid that you know you're never going to run into any problems, not going to be attacked, not going to take any damage, not have to worry about anything, take Demon Eye. Every time. The extra mana will save your life. Frog Leg. You can no longer become weakened. Scorpion Claw. Frail. Rabbit Paw. No longer cursed. So, you no longer do less damage, no longer gain less shield, and no longer have to use just the only 2 middle cards of your hand. Really solid cards. Well worth taking in late game. Solid Shell. Every 10th card you gain 10 shield. Really good if you're running into shield problems. Multi-shot. Every time you play a card, deal 1 damage to all enemies. If you're playing 6 or 7 cards in a turn, this just scales so good. Ranger had the best use of this. Druid, best use of multi-shot. Darkness Boots. At the start of your turn, gain 4 shield for each enemy weakened. It's okay. It's good. If you're applying, I should have taken it in my Warrior run, because I was applying enough weak that I would have been able to use the 4 shield per 3 targets, which for 12 HP, or for 12 shield, and it would have been great. Snail Shell. At the start of each combat, gain 2 armor. Now that I realize this, I wonder if it's the beginning or every combat phase where they do damage to you that you gain 2 armored. I'll have to research that and figure out how Snail Shell works. Perfect Crystal. Every 5th turn you gain immunity. Saved my life a couple of times. Weakening Aura. Take unblocked damage from an enemy will apply 2 weak to that enemy. If you're running really dangerous Necromancer strat with Weakening Aura, you can do work with this. Electrostatic Field. Every time you block an enemy attack, add 1 electrostatic point. At the start of your turn, deal 1 damage to all enemies for each electrostatic point. Same. Weakening Aura, Necromancer build, really good. Living Mana. If you have unspent mana at the end of your turn, deal 8 damage to all enemies. Leaving 1 mana up, sometimes, great. Book of Magic. Every time you play, or if you're running the Thunder Shock, the Thunder Blast, and you don't do anything, you do 28 damage that turn. Great. Book of Magic. Wizard primarily uses this. Every time you play 4 magic cards in a single turn, heal 4. Necronomicon. Gain 1 max mana permanently. Have your maximum HP. Dangerous. Don't ever run this unless you're super comfortable in your run. Maybe a Necromancer build, but don't ever run Necronomicon. Not worth it. Ghost Spear. Every time you play a silenced blocked card, deal 14 damage to a random enemy. This is really, really interesting. I didn't know they added this. And this means so that if you're silenced or blocked and you can't play combat or magic cards, but you only have those types of cards, you still deal damage and can kill somebody with Ghost Spear. That is a really good skill to have, like underrated actually, and it really doesn't cost very much. So if you're running into a problem where you're silencing or blocking yourself, or your enemies are doing it a lot, Ghost Spear, wonderful card. So, ladies and gentlemen, the only other reviewer I have here today with me, thank you for sitting here and watching my wonderful, wonderful time that I've had running this Rogue Adventure Warrior and card skills information. But I'm going to go ahead and basically call it a break right now. I'm going to take maybe like a 20-30 minute break, kind of get myself something to drink, probably put my glasses on, and come back to this. So feel free to stop back in here in about half an hour, and I'll probably be doing the next class run. Thank you so much for stopping by.